Suzanne Nadine Vega was born on July 11, 1959, in Santa Monica, California, but her childhood unfolded far from the Pacific beaches. When she was just 2.5, her parents divorced. Her mother, Pat Vega, a computer systems analyst, moved with her daughter to New York City. The New York of the 1960s, with its noisy streets, sharp social contrasts, and a swirl of cultural trends, became a true school of life for Suzanne. The family first settled in Spanish Harlem and later in Washington Heights. Even as a child, she absorbed the voices from the sidewalks, the music drifting from open windows, and the unrelenting rhythm of the city, elements that would later echo in her songs. Music didn't come to her as a family tradition, but as a personal discovery. At 8, inspired by an older neighbor, she picked up a guitar. By 9, she was writing her first songs. Simple, even naive, but a way to shape her thoughts and translate emotions into something others could understand. Suzanne wasn't chasing fame like many teenagers. She was drawn to quiet, intimate stories, music where meaning outweighed spectacle. Her years at New York's prestigious High School of Performing Arts became a turning point. She studied contemporary dance, dreaming at first of becoming a dancer, but soon realized the stage was more than technique. It was a conversation with the audience. Dance showed her how to tell a story without words, and she began searching for a form where words and music could merge as naturally. During this time, she fell under the influence of Joan Baez, Leonard Cohen, and Bob Dylan, artists for whom a song was poetry set to melody. By the late 1970s, while studying English literature at Barnard College, Vega understood that songwriting was her true calling. After classes, she performed at places like the Cornelia Street Cafe, Folk City, and the Speakeasy, intimate venues that were home to New York's growing singer-songwriter folk scene. She didn't compete for attention with volume or theatrics. Instead, she sang quietly, but with quiet conviction, letting her words carry the weight, and in doing so, she stood out from the more flamboyant voices around her. Her career took a major step forward when she began appearing in programs for young singer-songwriters, where she met producer Lenny Kaye, guitarist for the Patti Smith Group, and sound engineer Steve Adabo. They helped her record demo tapes, which Vega began sending out to record labels. The music industry at the time was in transition. Folk was considered niche, overshadowed by synth-pop and commercial rock and roll, and yet that very contrast made Vega stand out. Many producers and music editors saw her as the new face of an old genre. Her songs were minimalist, almost ascetic, but carried a poetic depth that reminded listeners of Joni Mitchell and early Joan Baez. In 1984, she signed with the British label A&M Records, helped in part by her successful live performances in the UK. Folk music still had a loyal audience there, and it was the British press that first called her the voice of the new acoustic wave. By then, her repertoire already included songs that would become cornerstones of her debut album: Marlene on the Wall, The Queen and the Soldier, and Small Blue Thing. Musically, these pieces were built on delicate, transparent arrangements, voice, acoustic guitar, with occasional touches of keyboards or strings, but their real strength lay in the words. Vega's lyrics often read like short stories or poems. For example, The Queen and the Soldier plays like a medieval ballad, using the dialogue between a warrior and a queen as a metaphor for power and submission. Marlene on the Wall blends autobiography with cultural imagery, turning a wall portrait into a silent witness of personal drama. Small Blue Thing is a chamber-like masterpiece where sparse music and pared-down lyrics create an almost whispered intimacy. By 1985, when her self-titled debut Suzanne Vega was released, all of these elements had formed a distinctive style, intellectual yet approachable, melancholic but never bleak. The album earned glowing reviews in Britain, moderate success in the US, and proved that in the era of synthesizers and drum machines, an acoustic guitar and a quiet voice could still captivate millions. Following its release, Vega toured extensively from 1985 to 1986, focusing mainly on Europe, where audiences were more receptive to acoustic music. These tours not only grew her fan base, but also reinforced her belief that listeners were willing to embrace thoughtful lyrics and understated arrangements. During this time, she began writing her second album, determined to keep the poetic depth while adding more energy and texture to the music. In 1987, she released Solitude Standing, the album that made her an international star. While the acoustic guitar still anchored the sound, the arrangements brought in a full band, more rhythm, and light pop rock elements. Its biggest hit, Luca, was told from the perspective of a child experiencing domestic abuse. Delivered in a restrained, observational tone without moralizing, the song struck a deep chord with audiences, climbing the charts on both sides of the Atlantic and earning a Grammy nomination. The same album also featured Tom's Diner, originally performed a cappella. In it, Vega paints a scene from a New York cafe with such precision that it feels like a slice of life, ordinary at first glance, but quietly poetic in its details. Her third album, Days of Open Hand, 1989, took a more experimental turn, blending atmospheric textures, synthesizers, and intricate arrangements. It was introspective and philosophical, with dense metaphors and a more reflective mood. Critics praised its ambition and literary quality, but commercially, it couldn't match the success of Solitude Standing. Still, it solidified Vega's reputation as an artist who ignored passing trends, instead building a self-contained world, one that was watchful, quietly intense, and deeply sincere. In 1990, the British duo DNA remixed Suzanne Vega's a cappella track Tom's Diner without permission, adding a pulsing electronic beat. The bootleg version quickly spread through radio and clubs, becoming an international hit. Instead of fighting the piracy, Vega took a pragmatic approach. She legalized the release. It was a smart move. The remix introduced her music to a completely different audience, far beyond the folk scene, and even earned her the nickname the godmother of MP3, since Tom's Diner was famously used by developers to test the MP3 format's sound compression. But with that popularity came a downside. In dance culture, many now saw her as a one-hit wonder, overshadowing her original repertoire. In 1992, she pushed back with 99.9 degrees Fahrenheit, her most radical departure from acoustic minimalism. Produced by Mitchell Froom and inspired in part by the remix's success, the album fused electronic textures, industrial rhythms, and a dense, urban studio sound. Tracks like Blood Makes Noise showed a sharper, more sardonic side of Vega. Critics responded well. The record even won a Grammy for Best Contemporary Folk Album, but its commercial performance was only modest, as some longtime fans struggled with the change in style. 4 years later, she returned with 9 Objects of Desire, 1996, a warmer, more intimate work that blended familiar folk sensibilities with subtle electronic and jazz touches. The lyrics became more symbolic and personal, touching on themes of motherhood and relationships. Critics admired its elegance, but commercially, it struggled to compete in a 1990s market dominated by grunge, Britpop, and pop idols. Vega's audience was shrinking, and her early 90s momentum had faded. In 1998, she released Tried and True, The Best of Suzanne Vega, a compilation featuring classics like Luca, Marlene on the Wall, and Tom's Diner, alongside a few new tracks. It reminded the public of her importance, but also underscored the fact that she hadn't scored a major new hit in years. The 90s had been a decade of creative risks and reinvention, but also one of waning mainstream attention. Still, Vega didn't step back. In 2001, she released Songs in Red and Gray, her first album after parting ways with Mitchell Froom. It was a return to her roots: spare arrangements, acoustic guitar, and transparent melodies. The lyrics were especially candid, shaped by personal changes and emotional turning points. Songs like Penitent and Widow's Walk felt like private confessions. Critics appreciated the intimacy, but commercially, the album barely registered, prompting Vega to take a 6-year break. That pause paid off. In 2007, she returned with Beauty and Crime, an album inspired by New York City, her lifelong muse. Blending soft folk with touches of jazz and pop, it was full of nostalgia, urban imagery, and reflections on love and loss. The record earned her a Grammy for Best Pop Vocal Album, a powerful sign of her enduring relevance more than 2 decades after her debut. In 2010, Vega began her Close-Up project, 4 albums reimagining her back catalog in stripped-down acoustic form, each with its own theme: love songs, people and places, states of being, and songs of family. The series proved her songwriting's durability. Even in its barest form, her work felt timeless. It also marked her transition from chasing commercial hits to pursuing purely artistic goals. Her later releases reflect that freedom. Tales from the Realm of the Queen of Pentacles, 2014, mixed folk with philosophical musings, while the live album An Evening of New York Songs and Stories, 2020, captured her in her element, telling stories, playing to an intimate audience, and revisiting the city that shaped her life and music. Suzanne Vega's journey, from a young poet singing in small New York cafes to one of the most respected voices in modern songwriting, is a testament to the power of authenticity. Her true gift lies in blending literary depth with musical simplicity, crafting songs that feel less like performances and more like shared experiences. For Vega, trends have always taken a backseat to honesty, and that's why, even after 4 decades, her music still speaks with the same quiet relevance it had from the very beginning.